This is an interactive reading of the scripture. I'd like you to, in the Ignatian tradition, imagine that you're part of the story, that you are the seeds, all right? So something happens to the seeds in the story, and each time it happens, and I'll give you the cue, we're going to say, "Oh no, what a world, what a world." Shall we practice that? "Oh no, what a world, what a world." I hope some of you know the reference. All right. Again, he began to teach. This is in Matthew's gospel. He began to teach beside the sea. Such a very large crowd gathered around him that he got into a boat on the sea and sat there, while the whole crowd was beside the sea, on the land. He began to teach them many things in parables, and in his teaching, he said to them, "Listen, a sower went out to sow, and as he sowed, some seed fell on the path, and the birds came and ate it up." Oh no, what a world, what a world. Other seed fell on rocky ground, where it did not have much soil, and it sprang up quickly, since it had no depth of soil. And when the sun rose, it withered away. Oh no, what a world, what a world. Other seed fell among thorns, and the thorns grew up and choked it. Oh no, what a world, what a world. And it yielded no grain. Other seed fell into good seed and brought forth grain, growing up and increasing and yielding 30 and 60 and 100-fold. He said, "Let anyone with ears to hear listen." Now imagine you're in the crowd. You're no longer one of the seeds. You are in the crowd listening to this story about seeds being sown, tossed on the ground. Imagine you know something like autumn about planting seeds, where they best take root, the conditions that help them grow. The story begins, and you're listening. A sower went out to sow. You can imagine that bag of seeds carried on the back of the sower as he walks out to a field. But some seed falls on the path, and you say to your neighbor, "Hey neighbor, that sower is not being very careful. That's wasted seed on the path." And your neighbor says, "Shh, quiet, I am trying to listen," just like he said, so let him tell the story. Sure enough, the seed is eaten by birds. You saw that happening. Other seed falls on the rocky ground. You just know it cannot root deeply enough to get water. When that sun comes up, boy, that seed's a goner, a seedling. And when the storyteller describes seed that falls among thorns, you think, oh, it's not going to be able to outcompete that invasive species. It's not going to produce anything. Then finally, to your great relief, there's actually seed that falls where it's supposed to. The good soil that the sower had probably prepared earlier, because farming was a thing, plowing the field, etc., etc. And you'd say, yes, now that's how it's supposed to be done. Listen. That's what the storyteller implores at the beginning and the ending of this story. Listen. Let anyone with ears to hear listen. What are you listening for? What do you hear in this story? I hear the story of my own garden, our garden. I hear the story of our own congregation. I am purposeful about how I plant most seeds. But I have learned that there are some plants I can let go to seed, and they replant themselves. Like tomatillos, they're a weed, let me tell you. All they need is a good spot, not even that great of a spot, some decent soil, So it surprised me this fall, when arugula plants emerged in a place I walk through regularly, daily even, multiple times a day, which, there it is. It's like a path. It's hard. But the soil in that part of the garden has been amended and tended for decades, really. The soil is just porous enough, and all it took was rain from a tropical storm. Remember the tropical storm we had? To get the seeds going. And I thought, well, they won't last too long. And I transplanted some of them where watering was happening, and others I left. You know what's really strange is the ones without water, like this one, are thriving. Yeah, and the ones where I planted, they didn't do so well. And then we got some more rain last week, and they're exceedingly productive in the path, because the soil was good enough. Wasn't perfect, but it was good enough. The story of our garden, I'm going to leave that up there. The story of our garden starts with investing in the soil, enriching the soil. It's been known for decades now that what is a long-term method, better long-term method of farming, is enriching the soil, investing in it. The flash in the pan, petrochemical fertilizers force high yields. It's great for the so-called bottom line, but leave the land and the groundwater in a sorry state, and it's really unsustainable. Just look at the Central Valley, where the groundwater is dangerously low and polluted from petrochemical fertilizers. It's just not sustainable. I hear the story of our congregation in this parable. I see the Spirit sowing seeds all the time among us all. And not all of them have to germinate and take root. That's okay. I think the Spirit gives us some options. Our part is tending the ground, the soil of our own spirits and the soil of this community. We invest in the people, and we invest in our learning the art of being community around Christ's table. As we are doing that, seeds are germinating, taking root, growing to fruition. Congregations plant seeds that can take a generation or more to mature, 30 years. When the decision was made about 30 years ago to refurbish this sanctuary and do some other capital improvements in the congregation, there was resistance. I like the sanctuary the way it is. It's just fun. Doesn't need to change. But there were several leaders who said out loud, we're not doing this for us. We're doing this for the future, for people we may never meet. We're making the changes for people not yet here. We're laying the groundwork. We are raising money. It ended up being about $100,000, I think. Isn't that right? For a capital campaign. Not for most of the people. Most of the people are gone. But they did it for the future. For people who hadn't even walked through the doors. It also included changing the entrance to the office so people could actually find it. Because let me tell you, it was really hidden and hard to find. The camellias that grace our campus were grown and tended by individual members, transplanted well over 60 years ago. No, we're talking back in the 50s. There's one person in the church, Nancy DeWolf, who helped tend some of those camellias. Everyone else is gone. But they tended those camellias, so every February, it's just gorgeous around here. It's beautiful. We are repairing a roof over the school. Did anybody read that article in the Caller? Thank you. I love you. Thank you. We're repairing the roof and at the same time installing solar panels. How many of you is this news? We're getting solar panels. Be bold, be brave, it's okay. Yeah, we're getting solar panels, something to celebrate. And that's going to ease our carbon footprint a bit more. It's going to help future members with the electric bills. A little bit will help us, but it's mostly for the future of the planet and the people who are going to be sitting where you're sitting in who knows how long from now. I told a friend of mine about this project, and she replied, "What a gift. What a gift." Seeds were planted this year in our community of faith as simple invitations to show up, to participate, even to lead. Just simple invitations. And those seeds emerged as reconstituting community at the women's retreat in August, as an intergenerational group of 26 women gathered for half a day and committed again to meet in January. We have a date, January 27th. Put it in your calendar. The men's breakfast had a reboot last month at which some pretty significant connections were made intergenerationally. And I'm told much was learned about the naming of one Jamie Gibson. There's a story there that I think would be fun to hear. Raymond Zapata was invited first to our FCC Pomona Icon house meeting here to just have some conversation with other people, and then to the Inland Communities Organizing Network Civic Academy on the housing crisis. Raymond grew up practically in this congregation. He's been here since he was in elementary school. He was baptized here. He participated regularly in Logos and in leadership opportunities and other ministries. This young man works 60 hours a week. He's co-parenting as a single father. And in spite of his more than full life, he said yes to both of those invitations. Yes, I'll be there. Watching and listening to him share his story a week ago, Wednesday, at the Civic Academy in front of 27 or 28 people, most of whom he did not know. That was joy for me. Deep, immense joy to witness his own storytelling, his stepping into his voice and his role as a leader, not just in the church, but in the community. We cannot always see, we don't always see the fruit that is produced. So it's important to celebrate when we do. We live in an era of loneliness. Surgeon General says so. We also live in a time of suspicion of others and even of belonging to community. Yet we also live in an era of longing for belonging. It's sacred calling. It is to create sacred space. It is a sacred calling to invest in people in the landscape of a community for the sake of reweaving the fabric of our society. It's a high and holy calling. Our faith is not a religious accessory, a bauble we wear occasionally. It is the very heart of who we are as individuals and as community. You enrich the soil of your own spirit and of this congregation every time you show up, in person, online, every time you participate in active learning and spiritual formation, like I trust you will next Sunday with others here, whether in person or virtually online. Every time you share your abilities and, yes, your financial resources. Like I wrote in the Caller article, I hope you all read that one too. It's not the amount we give. Where it starts is with our intention and steadiness with which we give. Intention and steadiness. We are investing in the people in this place. People who learn and act to support each other, who learn and act to reach out into our community and our world with God's love and compassion. Amen.